And the persona mapping is know who you're selling to, know their role in the organization, know their current environment, know their obstacles, know essentially everything about them. Who do they report to? What's the budget process? I mean, all those sorts of things at all almost a level where you could step into their function.
Hi there, this is Vijay Damojipurapu, and you're listening to the B2B Go-To-Market Leaders Podcast. The show where I go behind the scenes with top go-to-market practitioners to discuss their mindset and tactics. Hello, and welcome to the latest edition of the B2B Go-To-Market Leaders Podcast. Today, I have another insightful conversation, another insightful guest joining me from Mayfield, VC. So the name is Gamiel Gran. So without further ado, let me welcome to you the show, Gamiel. So welcome. Happy to have you.
Vijay, honored to be here. Thank you for having me as a guest. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my honor, and I'm sure even the listeners would love to hear what you have to share in the next 45, 60 minutes or so. So, with
Mhm.
that, I always start the show with the signature question, which is how do you view and define go to market?
Yeah, I mean, go-to-market acronym that we now apply, essentially is the sales organization, right? But I think of it really as um, us in anybody in a selling motion or anybody in the go-to-market team or resource is really the set of resources that helps your ultimate customer achieve some goal, some win for them. And I always have this very clear vision of being a value add
Hmm.
to my customer. And everything we do, whether we're partnering, we're trying to invest in a deal, or we're trying to enable a customer from a transaction standpoint, it's all about them. So I always lean the perspective. It's not about me, it's about them. And I'd love to get into the whole thing. So
Yeah.
it's much more existential than the team, the sales process, the metrics. I mean, those are the tools and things you use. It's more of the attribute and outcome, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I love the way you framed it. So, two things that come to my mind, Camille, is one, I think it was when I was at Sugar CRM about
Hmm.
close to 7, 10 years ago or so.
Hmm. Yeah.
Suddenly, a big aha moment or something happened to me where I started noticing myself as a product marketing director over there that I'm talking all about internally. It's about me versus I started shifting. And almost every weekend now, I literally write it on a sticky note and ingrain in my mind, which is reminding this quote and for myself, which is it's not about me, it's about them.
Yeah.
And them can be within a company or corporate environment, can be outside of your role, the other
Hmm.
stakeholders. But to
Yeah.
your point, them in this case, it's about the customers,
Right. Right.
right? Yeah. So that's something that I've seen. Yeah. I'll let you chime in and I have more thoughts to add.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the skills that a good salesperson brings um, is that they give off this ethos of curiosity about you, curiosity about your environment, curiosity about your needs, curiosity about your own personal goals.
Right.
And all of that becomes the enabling infrastructure, if you will, to partner with your customer and partner with your customer to achieve greater outcome um, versus I'm trying to make my quota.
Yeah.
Um, and as soon as you read as though you're trying to make your quota, you get dismissed as low value.
Hmm.
Um, I didn't learn anything. I didn't get anything.
Right.
You're just a salesman. Um, that's
Yeah.
painful.
Yeah.
Painful when you miss that.
Yeah.
So,
Totally right. I mean, it's almost like a contradictory style of thinking as a salesperson or even as a founder. I mean, founders relatively get it compared to
mhm.
a salesperson.
Yep. Yep.
It's always in the service of you, but underlying goal is what is in it for me and what will I get.
Yep.
But how I should come across. The thought process is, what is in it for you, and how do I serve you? The
Yep.
byproduct is what I get.
Yep.
Yeah. And just building on the conversation. So I was at Dreamforce yesterday and I met few leaders, and the CMO was talking about how they have customer value or being in service of the customer as like the number one value on the website.
Yep.
It's all there, right? I mean,
Yep.
it's there on the HR sheet and everywhere. But when it comes to day-to-day brainstorming,
Mhm.
identifying how do we prioritize and build our roadmap, how do we go to market, what do we do in service of the customer,
Mhm.
somehow that customer centricity is missing or takes a backseat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Too often, and particularly here in the Valley. I mean, this is in my role here at Mayfield. I, of course, get an opportunity to help a number of founders and entrepreneurs. Typically, their product first from a skill set standpoint. They're engineers. They have a thesis of a better product, a better tool, and that's their superpower. And sometimes they dismiss the more important superpower, which is to enable this outcome for their buyer, their customer, and at early stage, even design customers who might not even be commercial relationships, just early prototype users.
Yeah.
And to do so well, you need to understand that environment in depth. And I used the word before, partnering with your customer. That concept of linking arm in arm with your buyer, your
Mhm.
customer, whereby they believe they can achieve something together with you. You walk
Yeah.
down the aisle together, and that you're bringing value add that they alone couldn't achieve, but want to achieve, and that they trust you will help them reach that ground, that higher place.
Yeah.
Like, wow, what a relationship. So I've always thought, you got one mouth, you got two eyes,
Yeah.
you got two ears. Okay, you got four times the math here on
Hmm.
input.
Yeah.
Why are you still talking?
Right.
Just ask really thoughtful questions.
Yes, totally. I know we can go on and on for the next 45 minutes, but let me pause here. Let's take a segue and let's go big picture.
Mhm.
And if you can share with our listeners about your career journey, all the
Mhm.
transitions, and what led you to what you're doing today.
Yeah, I went to Cal Berkeley, graduated after a 2.5 year internship with IBM. And IBM hired me, surprisingly, during the middle of a big recession. This is in the mid 80s.
Hmm.
I took on a sales role after a year and a half of very formal, hard, really hard sales training that IBM did, where they'd send you to Atlanta for a month. You'd be put into sort of a process that was trying to weed out those who couldn't survive to be a true IBM salesperson. And to be an IBM salesperson, it was considered, and we didn't use the terminology at the time, but a consultative salesperson.
Yeah,
And if you remember back then, IBM was at the kingpin of the mainframe
right.
provider of the world, but also everything from mainframes to copiers and typewriters, and we had launched the IBM PC at the time, and so it was a whole sundry of things that you
Yeah,
had to be thoughtfully capable of articulating to the most senior sort of sales scenario. Anyway, so I spent nearly 10 years at IBM, first in sales, then rose up into a corp dev function. One of my corp dev relationships was Oracle,
hmm,
interestingly, where I got to know Larry Ellison and Ray Lane and the team there. They actually hired me. I ran a portion of sales and channels, and then global channels for Oracle for a while.
yeah,
Went from there to a startup that Vinod Khosla had started. So then I sort of branched into the venture world, I suppose. Did that for a bit. Corp dev job at BEA Software.
hmm,
Fast forward, I'm now at Mayfield. So here in the Valley, venture is a key piece of sort of the dialogue. When I joined the venture world, obviously becoming an investing partner was the objective. Finding, sourcing deals,
Yeah.
used my sales attributes to get out there aggressively, go pitch the story and win entrepreneurs. But what I realized, and this is sort of a fast forward to what I think my superpower or skill wants to be, and that is I learned that the investor at a boardroom only conversation was missing so much of what was really going on inside of a startup. And
Hmm.
having been at various startups and coached many founders, I knew that there was so much more of a need for the go-to-market skill set. And to truly be an excellent go-to-market founder, there's a lot more than just an update at a board meeting
Right.
to board members who, frankly, are on to their next board meeting as soon as they're done with this one
Yeah.
and don't really have the enough time to dive into it. So I was able to create a job as more of an operational partner, a go-to-market operational partner here in the venture world. There was no other venture firm that was doing it at the time that I started, which was way back in 2004 or five. I went around to other venture firms. I'm like, who's doing this kind of function? And people looked at me like I was nuts.
Yeah.
Now everybody has
Right.
a go-to-market team in their venture world, which is awesome. So maybe in a small way, I had some sort of impact there. So I think of go-to-market, as I said, as one of these founder journey skill sets that has to be one of the self-awareness problems that a founder has to come to terms with. And I've been able to fashion a process around that, a skill set rubric, and a set of steps that you as a founder take. And so I think of my customers as a founder now,
Mm.
the founder who has the mission to take their technology, their offering to the world and change the world, and help them navigate how to do that with elegance.
Very good. Wow. Yeah. So first of all, congratulations on a brilliant career. I mean, clearly you had an amazing start at IBM. And I know back in the days, it may not be the case right now so much, but back in the day, like in 80s and 90s, being inducted into the IBM sales program was like the top tier,
Yeah,
especially if you want to go into sales and go to market.
yeah. Mhm.
Right. And to your point, I mean, consultative selling, which is so critical, especially if you're selling to mid-market and enterprise, that's the way to go. And yeah, I mean, kudos to IBM to create an academy out of it. It's very similar to what Google has and is doing today for product managers.
Hmm, hmm.
That's the parallel I see.
Interesting. Yeah, great.
Yeah. And then so being you've been in IBM, you grew up the ranks, and
Yep.
then you made the shift and moved to Oracle. So what was the conversation like, or the pivot that
Yeah.
made you go to Oracle?
Yeah, at the time, the hardware business was being challenged by a whole new set of entrants. Sun Microsystems, Silicon Graphics, others were really moving from traditional proprietary operating systems to this Unix-based environment. Of course,
Yeah,
uh, cloud computing wasn't a conversation, but distributed computing, client server is what we called it at the time, was really changing the construct of application solutions delivery, really driven by the market. The market wanted more nimbleness, and mainframes were considered slow in a sense, too locked. So Sun Microsystems versus IBM at a high level. Oracle, of course, then being the kingpin of the SQL database, and SQL was this revolutionary thesis for the application developer that said, boy, I can get to a record, not a flat
right.
file, but a
Yeah,
whole individual record.
right.
That changes the whole design thesis of application. So those two things combined to create sort of a renaissance at the time. And I felt like I was stuck in the old world. And here I was meeting with the folks at Oracle, and one, Larry just was amazing.
Yeah,
Two, you could see the wealth that he was creating, not just for employees at Oracle, but for the customers, the partners, the solution providers, and everybody who was part of that sort of generation. And when they offered me a job, I'm like, this is amazing. Of course. I mean, it sounds like the most fascinating and important place to be. So,
Right. Yeah, fantastic. And then after that, you went to the startup world and was part of Vinod Khosla's startup,
yeah, that's right.
right? So something that I noticed, and the reason why I'm going down this track, Camille, is it's more for the advice to the younger listeners. So something
Yes.
that I noticed with you, as well as I've seen all the top tier performers in their field,
Hmm.
is it's almost like on an intentional basis, they pick the business leaders that they want to work with early on in
Yep.
their career.
Yep.
So if you can share your advice to the young
Yeah,
leaders.
I think that's an astute observation, and I'm not sure I was as thoughtful about that as an objective, though I was eager to learn from people who had carved a path. And people like Larry Ellison and Ray Lane, and then Vinod, and then when I went to BEA, Bill Coleman and Alfred Schwang, these were people who, against odds, were pushing a new thinking. And I
Mm,
think this is the skill set of an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur needs to be able to think outside of the box, not completely outside of the box, but to bring an intelligence, an assimilated intelligence with a new view, a new insight, and then not give up. It's not that they don't pivot or don't learn from things, but that they don't give up in a sense of continuing to be clear on what the North Star is. Um, Larry wanted to win, and what I learned from the Oracle team was winning at all cost,
mm,
and it was so dramatically different than almost um, the corporateness of IBM. And to me, it was just so refreshing.
yeah.
People would ask me, geez, you're working at Oracle, it must be a hard place to work. I'm like, no, 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 this is the cleanest place I've ever worked.
Mhm.
When I left IBM, I had I think, 40-page comp plan. Remember me saying we had typewriters to sell?
Yeah.
Well, I had to sell typewriters, copiers, storage devices,
Right.
and $12 million mainframes. And they were
Wow.
all part of, and I needed to sell a little bit of all of it to make my number.
Right.
When I got to Oracle, it was clear if you had big numbers, meaning you could create urgency with a customer and a buyer around a big opportunity.
Right.
Larry and Larry's team would create whatever product you wanted. We'll design that product.
Wow.
So you, as a salesperson, satisfy your customer, and we can open all kinds of doors. So it was an entirely different kind of thinking, and it was the first time I really sort of got the bite of the entrepreneurial competitiveness that makes up so much of the Valley, I think, still today. The willingness to bend over backward for that early adopter customer, to really be entrepreneurial in your product and have product capability as a core competency, but with your
Yeah.
customer in mind.
Wow.
IBM at the time had moved to a point where this is the product,
Hmm.
uh, and it wasn't editable.
Yeah.
It was in fact, we had at IBM at the time, which was a crazy thing to think about. We had a 3-year backlog for an IBM mainframe.
Mm,
And so if you sold it, you wouldn't deliver it for 36 months.
right.
And that was sort of the worst of times. And so I remember selling things that, you wouldn't get compensated for, years away.
Right.
And that meant that the customer was almost second fiddle in a sense.
Yeah.
They had to stand in line and wait.
Right.
Anyway, so
Yeah.
all kinds of interesting insights there.
No, 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 no. This is good. I mean, if IBM hardware devices, mainframes, yeah, 2 to 3 years versus Oracle software mostly. I mean, I don't
Yep.
think they sold servers back
Yeah.
then.
Yeah. No, 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 no hardware at all. In fact, the goal that Larry had was to have Oracle product ported to every single hardware device in the world as best in class performing. And so if you ran it on a Sun device or a digital device or Unisys device, it would be best in class. And that was actually my pitch to him is you're not running it on IBM hardware with top performance. Let's create top performant Oracle. And he
Yeah.
said, wow, that's out of the box. You really got the okay from your folks back at Armonk to to run Oracle
Yeah.
on all these IBM devices, like, well, yeah, we're either going to lose market share with Oracle or not. So we have to.
Yeah.
It didn't please people inside of IBM that I was porting Oracle to run as well, because DB2, of course,
Right.
IBM's database product was considered the kingpin in the industry at the time. So
Fantastic. I know we can go on and on in just this. Let's move on to the
yeah,
other.
I got lots of old stories for
I
sure.
So maybe we do a take two sometime next year. But coming back, so you made all the transitions and eventually you joined Mayfield initially from a corp dev perspective. Is that right, Gamil?
No, I joined Mayfield as an operating partner. So the operating partner for go-to-market for our portfolio. So we've got 80 or so portfolio companies. These are inception, sort of early
Yeah.
stage companies. They're in their first early product market fit, ICP, ideal customer profile work, helping the founder tell the story with a customer lens. So rethinking that investor pitch that you got successful funding from and really stop talking about you and the technology and start to talk about the customer. So that's what I spend most of my time doing. So,
Okay, understood. And I know you briefly talked about the whole thesis that Mayfield has built
mhm,
for AI and CAS. So if you can
mhm.
expand, maybe take a few minutes on that and how you and the Mayfield team is seeing the thesis unfold. We
Yeah,
can take a few.
great. Yeah, so of course AI is the topic of the day, and at a macro lens, and I mentioned client server technology
Right.
before, we went through the mobile, the dot-com era, and all these sorts of eras. Is AI bigger or different? And I would argue that it's significantly bigger from an operational transition standpoint. And there's two lenses here. One is the core infrastructure that makes up the entire IT stack today, everything from the data center that is running on an x86 based, Intel architected based infrastructure, the networking layer, the storage layer, the management layer, the tools, cybersecurity, and the SaaS layer of solutions, all the B2B SaaS solutions, makes up roughly $6 trillion of spend today. We believe that that entire IT stack, that is the core guts, if you will, or our IT operations of most Fortune 2000 companies, at 6 trillion a year, has to go through this transition to an AI first world.
Right.
That means that that x86 based Intel architected based data center is going to move to, at least in a portion, to a GPU based data center. That models and the models that are being designed around training and inference will become the new operating system, meaning applications will be designed to run off
Yeah.
those language models. That new data governance, data operations, and cybersecurity tools need to be created for those environments. That some of the SaaS vendors will recreate themselves to be more AI capable, changing not just their architecture, but also their business model, where they're more outcome based. And
Hmm.
then at the top of the stack, we believe there'll be thousands, if not millions, of agents, which will be really bespoke built solutions to take on tasks, and a federation of these tasks will ultimately be the user interface for how applications are designed and deployed going forward. So what I just designed there is sort of the replacement of the current legacy,
Yeah.
everything from Intel to, I don't know, ServiceNow and Workday, and Salesforce, you mentioned your Dreamforce, to an AI first agentic architecture.
Right.
That transition is the first big opportunity around AI, and really creating that environment, that infrastructure to support that. And so we, Mayfield, are investing in that. I think the other thing, though, to me, that complements or further catalyzes the value around AI is its ability to transform everything from a business process and outcome standpoint. Consumers will use ChatGPT to figure out their travel, their holiday, their things
Right.
differently than perhaps a traditional Google search model, but also business process, how we do compliance, how we do
Hmm.
accounts payable, how we do sales and sales operations will fundamentally change from a workflow and design standpoint over the next few years. And that race has begun. And we're going to talk about go-to-market here. I think there's a fundamental shift in an AI first go-to-market thesis that we're
Yeah.
just at the beginning of.
Right.
Just how I do my individual job as a salesperson to how my customer actually wants to operate with me, and perhaps even the role that agents will have fiduciary capability to transact on my behalf. Think of an agent coming into your website, you're a cybersecurity provider, and testing and prototyping that product on your behalf,
Right.
challenging an RFQ or some sort of procurement process, testing it, employing it into their technology, and then dismissing it as a failure, didn't actually achieve the outcome we wanted. And an agent may be doing all of that. And who manages that process? And so pretty far-reaching sort of workflow redesign in the world is broadly the thesis that I think AI is so much more interesting, and why it's so different than .com or mobile or social or client server computing or whatever else prior technology trends were. So,
Yeah, totally. I mean, for me, I've seen the transitions over the last 20, 25 years or so. I mean, of course, client server, that was one of the big things or big movement back in the 80s and 90s.
yep,
Then we went to the cloud
right,
transformation in like the early 2000s, and then the mobile in like
yep,
late, like around 2005, 6, 7. Of course, Steve
that's right,
Jobs,
that's right.
iPhone launch and everything, right?
Hmm.
But honestly, I mean, to your point, and this is the pulse I'm feeling from pretty much everyone, which is we've seen huge transformations, like not 10x, we're talking about 100x. But AI is really forcing us to rethink everything from the ground
Yep,
up. It's almost
yep,
like a 1000x scale or even more. Whatever we thought was true earlier, we have to be rethinking. So, to your point, make it even more specific. Agents doing the work. So when I bring it down to go to market, agents going to your website, doing the research, and then inquiring. And typically it'll be like a human inquiring and an SDR on the other side,
yep,
taking on and doing those that it is at least a qualification call. But now we're talking about agents going to the website and talking to another agent on the back end, which is providing the answers to the agent. And
hmm
the whole shortlisting of the vendors will be done
yep,
by agents.
yep,
What that means is your website, the way we all think about website has to be rethought. Are you
100%.
writing for humans? Are you
Yep,
writing for agents? Are you
yep.
writing for both? And what aspects of the buyer journey would be done by an agent
Hmm.
versus a human?
Yeah, and even just influence a portion of that by an agent, either just scouring or gathering content that is missed in its tone for a bot, a language model to discover it,
Yeah,
is the first order issue. And we've learned this with SEO. You know, you got to design your website for Google search.
right.
And how do you design it for an OpenAI, Mistral, or Claude bot to find it more precisely? And why
Yeah,
are you ranked so differently in this world? So that's first order issue. But I think this is bigger to to the point perhaps you opened with. I think we're at first principle conversation
yeah,
here.
exactly.
Uh, I have a solution that solves the following problem. Here's my ICP. How do I enable cleanest approach to solving that problem? Not, oh, sales ops does this and rev ops does this and finance does this. Like, let's remove all those things and talk to first principle, and less about organization, less about hierarchy, less
Mhm.
about org charts, less
Yeah,
internal, and much more outcome based.
correct.
I think that's a difficult transition of thinking, and getting to first principles sounds thoughtful, but I don't think we've been trained to be first principle generally.
Yeah,
And I think it's a very different leadership skill. And I do think that a go-to-market leader probably is the cleanest sort of person in the organization to say customer first,
right.
then interpret that. What does that exactly mean? And who then is accountable for enabling that? Hey, I'm not customer support. Yeah, you are. Uh, Hey, I'm not onboarding. Yeah, you are.
Right.
Hey, I'm not renewals. Yeah, you are. You're everything. But with the lens of, and I always use this term, Vijay, ha- think of your buyer and them telling their family, "Hey, we're going to Disneyland."
Right.
And what's it going to take for them to be so fluid, so confident that they're going to Disneyland? They've achieved their personal success. So
Yeah.
how do you help them go to Disneyland?
Yeah. Yeah. I know we went down the path of first principles thinking. I mean, it's intellectually very exciting to engage in the conversation. So if I put myself in the shoes of a founder of a startup, it's easy,
Yep,
relatively easy. I'm starting with a very clean slate. I can direct the team to think AI first, first
yep,
principles thinking, and design from scratch. Versus if I put myself in the shoes of a CEO or a CRO or a CMO or a CPO, for that matter, in like tens of millions in annual revenue or even hundreds of millions and billions, that's a whole different ballgame. I mean, yeah, first
that's right.
principles thinking, but how do we create that culture? How do we make that smooth transition from, hey, we still need to support, we need to bring our people along, we need to bring the customers and the product along, and at the same time, think AI native, AI first with first principles thinking? That's
Yeah.
a challenge.
It's probably enough, on the EQ side, an EQ person is a better listener kind of to the conversation we've had. But also stimulates um the idea, the innovative approach, the learning principles, the willingness to go beyond, to think of things differently, to be fluid, agile. I mean, all these sorts of
Yeah,
terms. And and broadly, we are measured to keep things consistent, not to break things, not to disrupt things, not to constantly bringing a new idea. Hey, just stop with the new ideas, Vijay. Can you just get what I asked you to get done?
yeah,
So we broadly, while we talk a good game on EQ and change and innovation, I think broadly we're measured by doing the same things consistently. People prefer that.
yeah,
So how do you flip that on its head? Because essentially, I think that's what AI will require. An AI native person will say things differently. They'll think about solving the problems differently. They won't use legacy as their arbiter.
hmm,
Uh, they'll say, yeah, an SDR has done this job, and here's how we hire them, and this is the profile. It's like, no, let's pick a different profile.
yeah, right.
I remember meeting with one of the professors at Carnegie Mellon who had merged the music department with the computer science department as an objective for design
Mm,
thinking. And people were like, well, what is that about? That doesn't make any sense. And he was this long-haired, ponytailed guy. I mean, he looked like a musician out of some Broadway show or something. And he went on to discuss the ability to look at the world with various lenses as the new best practice.
right,
And that if you could do that well and at scale with confidence,
right.
you actually would achieve better outcome for everybody. And that's the sort of the design thinking. There's a number of different terms for it, but I remember listening to him like, that's fascinating. That's really this diversity thesis. Have diverse mindset constantly be an enabler for you to think more efficiently. Now,
Right.
the flip side of this, though, Vijay, is we'll sit with founders who have been told no a lot, meaning they've got a new broad idea and they're having to sell this sort of missionary new thesis to a world that hasn't heard of them before, doesn't know this new brand or technology, and they're a disruptor. So when they get somebody that says, "Hey, that's interesting," there's a little bit of affirmation there, and
Yeah,
that affirmation feels good because I've been told no all day long and somebody
right.
said maybe. Well, what happens then is then that becomes in essence, an early pretend happy ear or North Star
Hmm.
that you interpret it. But if you interpret it truly, it's just happy ears.
Yeah,
And so sometimes entrepreneurs will go down too many paths and not be clear. So there is this balance. I'm just trying to refine the balance of, yes, you're innovative, you've got a diverse mind, you're open to change, but then you, as leader, and this is true for the CRO as it is for the CEO, you have to then define what winning looks like.
Yeah.
And you can't be in 12 places at once and win. You need to get clear. Open mind, opportunity to refine things, and then execute.
That's actually a great segue into our next section, which is a go-to-market success story
Mhm.
and a go-to-market pivot story. So either from, I think it'll be mostly from your portfolio experiences there, Gamil. If you can share, and let you choose which one you want to start with, either a pivot or a success. But let's
Sure.
go down that path and let's make it even more real for the listeners now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the first clear go-to-market thesis that really works is to have um, really clear persona mapping.
Right.
And we talked a little bit about this, my Disney idea, Disneyland
Hmm.
idea,
Yeah.
and the persona mapping is know who you're selling to, know their role in the organization, know their current environment, know their obstacles, know essentially everything about them. Who do they report to? What's the budget process? I mean, all those sorts of things at all almost a level where you could step into their function
Mm.
uh, and not be misguided there. So that's best principle on go to market is really clear on the persona mapping and principles of their success. When I've coached and been part of many companies, we get off topic often. When we get on topic, um, and I saw this at BEA Software, we were selling J2E framework to developers.
Hmm.
They had an issue. They needed to get their content up on the internet as fast as possible. They were held to an urgent objective,
Yeah.
and we had to lower the threshold. And this is going to age me. We created, and it wasn't websites at the time, it was just marketing,
Hmm.
but with a fax number. You could fax in an
Wow.
order, and a single developer could get a single license
Yeah.
and the key to the license from a fax order.
Yeah.
And it would happen all day long. I remember standing at BEA Software, and the fax machine would just
Yeah.
roll all day long, and the salespeople would just go up to the fax machine and grab another 50
Right.
pieces of paper, and then call the customer back and give them their license key.
Yeah.
And at the time, we were in that perfect, what I call violent product market fit. We knew precisely the pain, we had the precise offering, the precise price point that made sense for an individual developer. I think it was $3,700 for a license at the time, um, for an annual license. And that was easily approved by this developer, by his direct boss,
Right.
if not on his own. Um, uh, and we were just in that sweet spot. We then tried to expand the platform or the offering to be an enterprise version, and things just ground to a halt.
Mm.
We complicated it with new marketing, new messaging. While it made sense, it was a much more difficult sale because we really didn't know the CIO. We just knew the developer, and the CIO didn't know us. I learned the same at HashiCorp when we were seed investors in HashiCorp. The community, the open source community, was all about Terraform and Vault, and just
Right.
loved the technology. And it was selling like nothing ever before. But it wasn't actually commercially selling. It was just being deployed. And as you know, in the open source world, you've got to convert some portion of them into paid
Right.
customers ultimately to survive. There was a pretty low sub 5% sort of conversion of open source into commercial, and the same sort of problem applied. So I learned what I learned from BEA, we applied to HashiCorp, which is how do you get the CIO of, I don't know, JP Morgan or someone to say, okay, I need this full suite of HashiCorp products.
Yeah.
It becomes architecturally important. And so what I learned out of all that was it's good to have a bottoms up thesis to drive momentum.
Hmm.
It's good to have an organization that can use that to drive adoption.
Yeah.
But then you need to use and create a different selling process to do the top down selling
Right.
that brings value add strategically. And it was two different sales messages, two different sales teams, two different quotas assignments.
Yep.
And then partnering really mattered in both of these
Mm.
sort of scenarios where we leveraged others who were already at that level of dialogue, at the strategy and outlook. So at BEA, we brought in Accenture, who were creating reference architectures for every industry, for what a dot-com industry for energy, for manufacturing, for consumer, for retail, et cetera, would be, and where
Yep.
the BEA software fit into that. I applied the same lens with the HashiCorp team to get him into the initial Wall Street banking environment, which sort of opened up the
Mm.
doors and lighthouse accounts became real at that point. So yeah.
Yeah. No, fantastic. A lot of insights, lessons there spanning decades of your experience. How you took the experience from your time at BEA and how you brought that to HashiCorp, one of your portfolio companies.
Mhm.
And so one thing that really caught my attention there, Gamil, is I think emphasis on ICP, the
Yep.
buyer
Yep.
slash user, right? And really getting down to the detail, as you so correctly put it, which is you should be operating as though you are in their function, or you should have that kind of visibility. So, how do you teach that to the founders and go-to-market leaders in your portfolio companies?
You push them. You push them to ask the question, or you push them to answer the question in a more in-depth level. And often they know it, but
Mm,
they don't necessarily appreciate that they know it. So it's not unusual for a founder to come meet with me and say, "Yeah, we're selling into banking." And I'm like, "Yeah, who? What kind of bank? Who's the individual? What's the use case?" And they actually do know these things,
mm,
but the language that they're using is not precise enough. And I say to them, it's great that you're clear that banking is the target, but guess what? Everybody in the organization is listening to you. You're the founder.
right.
And you say banking when indeed what you could have said is you solve anti-money laundering compliance at mid-market banks who don't have resources
Yeah.
like large banks do. And all of a sudden, you just described for me the precision of use case, the precision of market size, and the precision of type of pain
Right.
that's probably more urgent for that buyer type. And now you're educating people. So think of your job as founder as not just being clear on North Star, this is what we're supposed to do, but clear in the precision of execution. Everybody's taping you. They're listening to, hey, my founder said we're selling to banks. No, he didn't say that. He said we're selling to mid-market banks who have anti-money laundering resource issues, and we're the answer to that resource problem.
Yeah. I love the way where you push the founder into really getting crisp, and more importantly, the reason why they have to be thoughtful in
Yeah.
and conscious about the words that's coming out of the mouths, right?
Yes. And,
As
and
a
and they miss that. And so
right,
interpreting the value of that, and I think of it from a parent standpoint. I don't know if you're a parent as well,
yeah,
but you know that I always used to joke with my wife. It's like they're taping us. And I know they weren't exactly taping us, but
yeah,
how we interact,
that's
how I embrace her when I come home, or how, I'm all angry about something, like, yep,
yeah,
yep, they didn't miss a thing. They caught every bit of it. And so same true if I'm a young employee at a new startup. Boy, my founder is my North Star.
right.
What he says or she says or how they say it and what they do. And because all of that is context for me to be expert in the organization. So yeah, you're on stage all day long.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, that's actually very much in line with going back to the parenting and why it's so important as a founder. I mean, these are like two different worlds, but the same principle applies, which is you're a role model and you need to practice what you preach. I mean, there are two aspects of it. So for me as a parent, same principle, right? How I interact with my wife, how I interact with my kids when I'm upset versus happy. It's
Yep.
almost like I'm teaching them or ingraining or they're wiring their LLM within their
Yes,
mind
yes, yes,
and learning,
exactly. Yep.
right?
Yep.
That's
Good
what is
analogy.
happening. And so along those lines, by the way, one of the things that I do is advise very early stage founders and startups. And to your point, Gamil, when you mentioned about knowing the ICP and who you're going after, there's a complementary aspect, which is the ICP that you should not be going after as well.
Mhm. Yeah.
And yeah, I'm just going to finish my thought, and I'm sure you'll have
Yep.
more
Yep.
to add to that.
Please.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I was advising the founder over a span of like 2 or 3 weeks, they realized, and in fact, I provided them a framework as to what level of depth you need to be getting down into, which
Hmm.
is, yes, you're selling to, let's say it's restaurants or food chains, but
Hmm.
then are there a single store, a single location, or a multi-location?
Hmm.
And is it like, do they have a need for recruiting on an ongoing basis? Why or why not? Who is the buyer? Who is the gatekeeper? Right?
Yep.
That's the framework that I provided them. And over a span of 2 to 3 weeks, they came back and said, okay, now, Vijay, you know what? I'm thrilled to share that at least we have a clarity on who not to go after,
Yeah.
non-ICP,
Wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Love the not conversation, because that presents as higher maturity from a go-to-market thesis standpoint. And so, yeah, I love to start with the nots.
Right.
Who have you dismissed as out of scope and why? And does that then provide clarity? And again, to the language of teaching your team, boy, starting with some knots, why, what great affirmation. I've seen and trained sales teams before at QBRs or sales kickoffs, and when you can provide that, hey, we're not in these markets, you can see the team become stronger in a sense. They sort of
Mm.
stand up and go, oh, great. Now, as the company matures, they want to cover all markets and everything and whatnot. But when you're early and you're in sort of that early missionary selling, uh, helping clean the noise
Right.
or clean up the noise, I guess, can really empower the team to be much more efficiently successful. So,
Yeah. And again, going back to the whole go-to-market thesis, which is around what is in it for them and how we are helping them and solving something for them.
yep.
And as a founder and early stage founders and early stage leaders, I personally experienced it about a few years and decades ago, and I continue to experience that. And same thing when I work with the companies, both on a consulting and advisory role, there is always this urge, especially for early stage founders, which is how can we go faster?
Yeah.
How can we go really fast to find that product market fit?
Yeah.
Right. But defining product market fit, there's no like specific KPIs. I mean, you can feel it. There's
Hmm.
a qualitative aspect or a sensory aspect to it.
Hmm.
There's a go fast, but then you can only go so much faster. And the point I always bring and remind the founders is you need to go faster, but not in the hope of you will hit product market fit by within like 3 or 6 months.
Hmm.
Sure, it'll be great if you can hit that, but it's
Yeah.
all about how quickly can you learn, iterate, and adapt that'll get you to that product market fit milestone.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that there's perfect answers here, but I think of the early stage company needing to have a war room sort of thesis to how they manage every single step of the customer journey.
Yeah.
And part of the lens that I'd be cautious to not overstep is to be too self-serving in
Mm.
this. So yeah, we know our steps. Let's continue to remove obstacles. Do we actually need to do that demo? Do we have to schedule the demo that way? Can we not have it real time? Can we make these resources more easily available? So yeah, okay, so that's our stuff. But then there's this adoption question on the customer side. What is it going to take for first usage? At what point, and I always think of this as that if that single developer, that single user uses it, at what point do they lean up and tell their peers in the organization, look what I've achieved. I don't
Right.
know, I'm using this new tool from somebody, but look at this achievement that I've created. And what time will it take for that to occur? I remember working early with Mark Benioff and the Salesforce team when they were just getting started. And remember that no software was
Hmm.
was the was
Right.
the logo that they used. And at the time, if somebody had a Salesforce-like tool in the industry, they were rare. So nobody
Yeah.
really had automation for pipeline management, or customer detail. We had customer contact information, but nothing that was sales related, really. And so if you were a regional sales manager, you would gather up every Friday night in preparation for your Monday pipeline review
Right.
meeting with your boss. Everybody's little spreadsheet, so from Bob to Susan and everybody in your territory, Friday would be your afternoon that you would be gathering this up. And I remember the early Salesforce team would call these regional sales managers
Hmm.
and offer to help them with their pipeline assessment and summary that Friday afternoon in preparation for Monday,
Wow.
and deliver back to them this beautiful pie chart,
Yeah.
bar chart, summary, alphabetized of all deals with
Yeah.
priority. And it would come back to them, so the Salesforce rep would call and say, "Hey, Vijay, I understand you're a regional sales manager for XYZ company. My guess is you're probably going to spend this weekend working on machinating a bunch of spreadsheets into something that's beautiful that you're confident about that you need to
Yeah.
present to your boss."
Right.
Damn right, that's what I'm working on all weekend. My wife hates me because of this, and this is my life. Well, what if I could solve that for you? Let me just show you a visual of what we
Yeah.
could do. And this was early, so there was no Zoom or anything else. So this
Sure.
was all just live phone conversations. But they would send back an email with your report
Mm.
after you had given me all your sales data.
Yeah.
Well, what happened then on the Monday pipeline review meeting is you went in, VJ,
Right.
looking like, wow, you have game on. You
Yeah.
got a pie chart and a bar chart, and you can machinate the data. And everybody in the rest of the pipeline review meeting is like, what is that? And I
Right.
need that now.
Yes. And you show up as a hero with a
Yeah.
good weekend where you rested versus
Yeah.
working your back off on all these reports. It goes back to the
And
point.
I thought it was so clear that they weren't going to the CRO, they were going to the regional guy or person, and use that as a vehicle. And I don't, Mark and his team changed the sales ops process to
Yeah.
many other things, but this was early innings. And I thought, wow, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, no, that's a great story. And in fact, that's a good reminder for all of us who are thinking about ICP and go-to-market, especially in the AI world, which is what is that one or two workflow, which is
mhm.
super, super painful for that person. It need not be at the C level or even at a VP level, but that human at as an individual contributor and why they're struggling with that workflow and how can you
Yeah.
make their lives easy?
I call that the hair on fire issue.
Yeah,
So, what is your hair on fire issue? And then what's your superpower against that hair on fire? And
yeah,
if you can't describe, this is the ICP conversation, if you can't describe almost viscerally
yeah,
the hair on fire issue, then you don't belong in the room. You don't really appreciate my burden because my burden's so important, it's causing me to stop everything else.
yeah.
But if you do, then I need you right now.
Yeah, fantastic. I know we are almost coming up against time here. So, two questions for you, Gamil. One is if you look back at your journey,
Mhm.
what almost broke you down, either as an operator or at your time at Mayfield looking at the portfolio companies? Like, what almost broke you down?
I've always considered myself pretty entrepreneurial, and I was willing to take on tasks and roles that were sort of outside of the box. Because I love the innovative new approach. Hey, there's this new thing, Gamiel. Do you want to go lead this? Like, yeah. And being shot down by others, being told that's crazy,
Mm,
um, out of scope, and listening to that would be, I guess, the life lesson that I would learn from.
mm,
So be your own North Star would be my advice. You have to you have to run your own steering wheel. You're driving your own boat, car, bus, whatever,
yeah,
whatever it is.
right.
And leaning on your boss, your team, your others to say this is where you should go is
Mm,
good input, but not necessarily the answer.
yeah,
I think of the same thing as I advise founders. You go to a board meeting and there's 12 board members there or three or whatever the quantity is, and they all have different objectives
right,
and they want to provide advice to you. You have to take everything under advisement, not necessarily react. So
right,
when people offer advice, remember that you are the North Star. What do you want to steer toward? Be clear on that. Assimilate information, gather all kinds of insight, but do not flip flap back and forth just because somebody says go left and
right.
you like,
Yeah,
well, I'm not sure I want to go left, but she told me to go left. Like, wait a minute, I'm the authority. I know what I want best and be confident in that. So be your own leader, be your own North Star, assimilate information really well,
yeah,
quietly think about it. If you're at the board meeting, you say, thank you for that input. Let me come back to you at the next board meeting with my assessment as to how that will fit or not into our strategy.
yeah. No, that's
Do the same
fantastic.
with your life, right?
Yeah. That's actually a good segue into the last question. Maybe you already answered it in many parts over here, which is what advice would you give to your younger self on day one of your career journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same
Yeah,
same point, which is
right.
you own the steering wheel. I guess if I were to think through, why did it take so long at IBM for me to be clear on what I wanted to do next? I think what I was doing was fitting in
Mm,
versus executing on my vision.
right.
And I think if there was advice there, it's like, yeah, I got to fit in. I got to be politically correct. I've got to report to the mechanism that is here. But at the same time, I have a personal goal too. And be self-aware there.
Yeah.
If you're just applying, sort of saluting all the time, you probably are taking too long and you
Mm,
probably can move a lot faster. Take advice, assimilate it, make a decision, be clear, and be more of a leader sooner because of that.
yeah. Fantastic. Great conversation, Gamil. Thank you so much for your time. I'm sure the listeners are taking away a lot of notes or actions that they can put into this week itself. So thank you so much and good luck to you and the team at Mayfield.
Great. Thank you. Nice to be part of this. Real honor. So take care. Thanks, Vijay.
Hi there. Thank you for listening to this episode of the B2B Go-To-Market Leaders Podcast. I have all of the show notes and a full transcript on strativ.com. stratyvyve.com. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get a podcast. Leave a rating and a review. Your comments will help other go-to-market professionals find this podcast.